You guys might not know this about me, but I'm a huge fan of Stranger Things. As a matter of fact, I've seen all 4 seasons twice over, and I'm actually in the middle of rewatching the series again for the 3rd time. Because, of course, the upcoming season is coming up pretty soon. November 26th is when we're going to get season 5, the final season of Stranger Things. And I wanted to make sure that I am refreshed and ready to go, and I want to make sure you guys are as well. So we're doing a recap video. We're gonna go through the series 1 season at a time. I might eventually combine it into one big video, but this video is going to be about Stranger Things Season 1. I'm going to try to keep it brief yet informative to make sure you guys are ready for that 5th season. So you're walking in fully refreshed and remembering everything that went down. So let's dive into Season 1 of Stranger Things. The first episode of Stranger Things opens with a Hawkins scientist running through the lab trying to escape a monster. This will be our first preview of the main threat of the season. We cut to a group of kids playing D&D in a basement. This is Mike, Will, Dustin, and Lucas. It's after this game, on the way home, that Will Byers runs into the monster that escaped from Hawkins' lab, and he ends up vanishing without a trace. From here, Will's mom, played by Winona Ryder, approaches Chief Hopper, played by David Harbour, and he seems quite skeptical that that kid is missing at all. This is the guy who has not seen too much action. Hawkins is a very low-key town, so he's thinking, okay, this kid's just missing. He's just hiding, he's running away, he's acting like a kid. But of course, he is the chief, and he has a history of choice, so he does agree to look into it, as his job does require. Now let's talk about arguably the main character of this series. I really think it might be this character, and I'm talking, of course, about 11. When we first meet her, she has just escaped from Hawkins' lab, and she eventually finds her way to Benny's and tries to steal some food from him because she's really hungry. She's been on the run for quite a bit of time. He feeds her some food, tries to find out more about her, and calls for some help, but he gets shot dead when that help shows up, and is nothing more than just a dirty Hawkins employee. Because Hawkins' lab is well aware that one of their experiments has gotten loose, and they are trying to make sure that they are cleaning up their loose ends, and they are willing to do anything and everything to make sure that this is kept quiet. After leaving Benny's, 11 runs into Mike and the gang, who are out looking for Will. Mike brings 11 to his house, hides her in his basement, and tries to help her feel safe. And it's at this point, when she's in this basement, looking through all of Mike's pictures, that she notices a photo of Will, and she feels like she recognizes him. She points right at him. Mike, Lucas, and Dustin all take interest in her claim that she has seen Will, and that he is trapped in a place called the Upside Down. Now that is a big location for Stranger Things. It is a central part of this plot, and it's a really cool place. I mean, it's really cool looking. The design is really cool. It's actually an awful place full of disgusting floating spores and giant monsters. But that's getting sidetracked. The Upside Down is a place that you cannot get to unless you have a doorway. And they find out that in order to have a doorway that would lead to some kind of a pocket dimension like this, you have to have a lot of energy. And as it turns out, they do know somebody who's capable of making that kind of energy, but they don't really realize that 11 has actually seen this door. So they go out looking for it, and she's keeping very quiet. She doesn't really want to find this gate because, of course, that means going back to Hawkins' lab, which she just escaped from. Now, here's something I should mention in case people forgot, and I don't really know how you could, but of course, 11 has telekinetic and psychic abilities, and she has these abilities because of an experiment that her mom went through when she was still pregnant with her. We don't really know the full extent of these experiments, but we do know that these people that volunteered were given drugs and put into these water tanks to have these effects tested on them. And somehow throughout that experiment, these abilities ended up getting passed to baby Jane. We do end up meeting 11's mom when Hopper and Joyce go on a side quest to investigate the mystery of a child that they think could be related to Hawkins' lab. Now, why do they think that? Well, let's jump back a bit because I did leap forward in order to address the powers that 11 has. So eventually a body is recovered from a quarry, and this is supposedly the body of Will Byers, but something doesn't add up, and Joyce refuses to believe that this is in fact her son because she remembers speaking to Will just the night before using these lights. So if he was alive and communicating to her through these Christmas lights, then how can he really be dead? Hopper, on the other hand, takes that finding of the body at face value until he starts to question who it is exactly that found that body. It was someone who wasn't supposed to be there, and as it turns out, he was only there because he was told to be there, and he was also instructed not to let anyone get too close to the body that they found. Now that is hella fishy, right? And Harbour thinks so too, which is why he breaks into the morgue and looks at Will's body, only to find out that that body is fake. So now, armed with the knowledge that Hawkins' lab planted a fake body, well, it kind of makes them seem hella suspicious. We actually have 2 missing person cases in this first season. We have, of course, Will, but we also have Barb. Barb is Nancy's friend. Nancy is Mike's sister. Her and Barb go to a party one night at Steve's house, and Barb ends up taken by the Demogorgon into the Upside Down. Poor Barb. Poor Barb. So now let's talk about Nancy, Steve, and Jonathan. As I said, Nancy is Mike's sister, and she's dating Steve. Steve, for most of the season, is a big douchebag, but he does eventually turn around and become a much more likable character. Jonathan is Will's brother, and although at first he thinks his mom is crazy for thinking that Will is alive, he starts to change his tune as he starts helping Nancy look for Barb. They eventually set out to find the Demogorgon that took Barb, and it's during this mission that Nancy ends up being the first person in the main cast to enter the Upside Down. She finds a doorway in a tree that takes her into the Upside Down, where she comes face to face with a Demogorgon and narrowly escapes with her life. So we've got a fake Will body, Barb is missing, and Hawkins' lab is dead at the center of all of this. Mike, Dustin, and Lucas are initially very hurt after this body is found, and Mike even lashes out at Eleven for giving him false hope that Will is in fact alive. But Eleven is actually able to prove that Will is in fact alive by showing the boys that she can reach out to him. They head to the school where Eleven dons this really interesting blonde wig, and she uses this much stronger radio to reach out to Will and confirms to the boys that yes, Will is alive, and she even takes a moment to embarrass a bully in a very, very satisfying scene. Who doesn't love bullies getting beat up and humiliated? And I should mention that all the while during this whole investigation process that the boys are doing, Dr. Brenner is continuing to track down the movements of Eleven, determined to find his property and bring her back where she belongs. He does even manage to track her down, but Eleven uses some of those badass powers of hers and escapes with the boys. Hopper and Joyce rescue Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Eleven and bring them to the school where everyone gets a formal introduction to Eleven and her super awesome powers. It's there where they find out confirmation that yes, Will is alive, but Barb is very much dead. Again, sorry Barb. Sorry Barb. Hopper and Joyce leave and break into Hawkins' lab, get caught, and eventually Hopper makes a deal with Brenner so that he and Joyce can go through the gate, rescue Will, and forget all of this ever happened. And I'm not exactly sure the full extent of what deal was made, but Hopper ends up telling Brenner exactly where to find Eleven, which so happens to be at the school with the boys. The Hawkins lackeys and Brenner head to the school to recover Eleven, but she makes quick work of them and ends up creating enough carnage to bring out the Demogorgon, the monster from the Upside Down, which happens to be attracted to the smell of blood, which she just left a lot of. The Demogorgon kills the Hawkins flukies and even attacks Dr. Brenner, although we never actually see him die. That's important to think about. Cornered and in danger, Eleven uses her powers to save the boys from the Demogorgon, but the power she exerts causes her to literally vanish. Meanwhile, Joyce and Hopper find Will in the Upside Down, and he's in a bad way. Hopper attempts to resuscitate Will, and we see flashbacks of Hopper's own personal experience with loss. We find out during the season that Hopper once had a daughter named Sarah, who died of cancer, pretty much taking everything that he cared about with him, leaving him very much an empty shell of a person, a very moody guy. That's the guy we're seeing here, and who can blame him, really? You lose a kid to cancer, it's gonna totally change everything about you. Will is finally resuscitated, and we see the boys picking up the pieces of this horrible ordeal. It seems like a happy ending, but at the end of the episode, we get some little nuggets of what's to come. We see Hopper leaving some Eggos out in a box in the middle of the woods, a sign that Eleven is in fact alive, and another huge nugget comes when we see Will cough up a slug and suddenly get a glimpse of the Upside Down while he's in the bathroom. He's in the bathroom and suddenly he's in the Upside Down version of his bathroom. So it would seem like the Upside Down is not finished with Will, and that's it. That's the main story points of season 1 of Stranger Things. I will be recapping the remaining seasons as I finish watching them, so keep an eye out for those videos, and I'm eventually, like I said, going to combine it into one big video for people who want one thing. If you liked this video, please go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want to hear more things from me, I do a lot of movie reviews, video game reviews, TV show reviews, and occasionally recaps for TV shows, then subscribe to this channel. Later.